There's three key adjustments to a conditioning system, to a roll conditioning system like these chevron rubber intermeshing rolls. Timing, roll gap, and roll pressure. So we're going to first talk about roll timing, and this is an adjustment that normally does not need to be made. It's basically a check to make sure it's right. If it's incorrect, the crop will get pinched between the lugs, causing more damage, causing loss in tonnage as well as loss in feed value. So if you zero in here, you can see where the roll adjustment is, roll timing adjustment. It's in this area right here. And you can loosen up this and change the timing such that the lugs never touch. This is a proper timing. If it's like that, it's going to damage crop too much. So the timing is such that the lugs never touch. So you basically center it. And again, that adjustment should not normally need to be made, but it should be checked. First adjustment is to check roll timing and adjust it if needed. The other one is roll gap, which is the gap down in here, and that's adjusted to the crop. Basically, the rolls must never touch, and there is some run out in the rolls, so you got to make sure you roll them over when you adjust it. And the gap should be such that it actually is tight on the stem of the average crop, which is usually around 1/8 of an inch. If you were in a bigger crop, like a cane crop, you'd want to open it slightly more. So that adjustment there is roll gap. It's critical to crop dry down. The first thing you do is you check the gap, and then you go in here and you can adjust this bolt right here to increase or decrease the roll gap to the dimension I mentioned, which would be the width of the intermeshing roll would be just tight on the crop, so that it gives a little crush and scrub of the waxy cuticle.
The ways to check the roll gap is to make aluminum foil into a tube. You can wrap this around a broom handle or something, but get yourself a nice tube. Take and roll the machine over using the cutter bar like so, and then on each end run a piece of aluminum foil through, as you can see here, which will give it the exact profile of the chevron intermeshing rolls, including the roll gap. And you can see on this side here, we'll do it the same. We'll run it through here. What we now have is a clear profile, and you can see the roll gap dimension right there. Now basically what we need is that roll gap to be tight on the stem of the crop. So that gives a little crush and scrub as it's conditioning. So really, in most crops, it's going to be about 1/8 of an inch, or basically so the rolls clear each other by about 1/8 of an inch. You need to roll it over. And if that adjustment needs to be made, it's over here with the roll gap adjustment screws on the side. One per side.
Okay, the third key adjustment to the conditioning system, to the roll conditioning system, is the roll pressure. And that's done with this mechanism right here. You can see the hand crank and the screw, and this linkage here actually goes to the torsion bars, one here and one here. And basically these are torsion springs that wind up and give the pressure to the top roll. So basically you take and you start by loosening it to the point where this nut is loose, so you know you're in the starting point. There's no tension on the rolls at this point. So now I'm going to crank it down to a starting point, and I'm going to say going down about 10 turns would get you in a good point to start in the field, and then you can adjust it more or less from there depending on the type of crop and the volume of the crop. Okay, here's a crop that's been cut and under condition, and you'll see that everything is intact and there's been no action to break the waxy cuticle surface. So you can see there's no, when you pick it up, it's rigid. The batch is pretty solid and firm versus being drooping as if it was conditioned. You don't see any crimping action. You don't see any crush action. Just one little bit there. Of course, there's no leaf damage either because we've really not conditioned it very much. So what you should be looking for is to get a crimp, a crush, and another crimp. And we'll show that in a moment of the proper conditioning. The reasons it would be under condition would be possibly because the roll gap is set too wide, or maybe even opened up to the point where the crop's hardly being contacted very aggressively. Also, the roll pressure being backed off to probably nearly nothing would cause this. The normal setting would be 8 to 10 turns down to start the crop, and then you go from there. But roll gap and roll pressure would be incorrectly set that would cause under conditioning like this. Bottom line, this crop will not dry very fast. This crop here is conditioned properly, where when you pick it up, you can see it's raggy or it's drooping, indicating it's been some crimps. And if you look at it, you're going to find some crimps that don't break off the stem, that open up the waxy cuticle layer, and also a crush. You can see it right in there where it's been crushed and crimped. And each stem, for sure, 9 out of 10 stems need to have a crush and a crimp. And you should not touch or have any black spots on any more than 5% of the leaves. And that's just an estimate. If you want, you can count the leaves. But it's very easy to count the stems. 9 out of 10 having a crush and a crimp to it. So the bottom line is what you want is to dry the stems to match the quickly drying leaves, so that you retain the leaves, get the crop dried fast, and have a crop that's of high feed value. So you can see it there. And the leaves, you can see there's very little damage to the leaves, which means they'll stay intact and will be retained in the baler or the chopper. But when you look at this, I mean, that's an example of overconditioning. Here we've broke the stem right off because roll pressure is too much. I know on this machine the roll gap is correct. I know the roll timing is correct. So I'm saying that this roll pressure is too much for this crop. Damaging the leaves, losing that feed value that comes from the leaves. Also, you're going to lose tonnage because some of this is going to go away. Some of these parts will be lost in the field and it will never be processed by a chopper or a baler.